Hi Year 9, welcome back, and today we're going to do conscientious objectors. That is a difficult word to say. So, conscientious objectors are basically people that refuse to fight during the First and Second World War. If you are conscientious, you're thinking about things, you feel strongly about things, and you, obviously, if you're objecting, you don't want to do it, so they're refusing to fight. Lots of them were refusing to fight on religious grounds, and in the First World War, it was maybe think about 16,000 people who refused to fight. And if you think about it, millions fought in World War I, so it's not a huge amount of the population. But I think that's probably what makes it more significant, because it was only a small minority of people, so they stand out. So in 1916, 2 years after First World War started, they introduced conscription. Also another hard word to say. They introduced conscription, and basically it means you don't have a choice. You have to sign up and join the army. First 2 years of the war, you could choose to. You didn't have to. But most people did want to sign up, so they didn't have problems with recruits. It was only a couple of years into the war that they were sort of lagging on numbers and they needed people to sign up. So after that happened, that's when you get the conscientious objectors. And in the First World War, they were treated really, really badly. So if you were conscientiously objecting, you had to go to a tribunal, so basically like a military court. So you had to stand up in front of the military officials and say, I refuse to fight in World War I because of this reason. Then they would decide whether it was valid or not and what your punishment would be. Some of them, they decided it was a valid reason, and they didn't have to. Some of them, they were like, that's kind of a good reason. So you don't have to go and fight, but you do have to take this desk job, for example. So they had to contribute, but not actively fighting in the trenches. And a third one was if they decided it wasn't at all a valid reason, it was a terrible reason, and they were sentenced to go to prison. And this is probably the most significant thing. If they were in prison, they were treated very, very badly. Some even died at the abuse that they got in prison. Some had mental breakdowns when they left prison because they had been treated so terribly. And the public were also very anti-conscientious objectors. You can imagine, say their brother, their dad, their cousin, uncle, whoever had signed up and gone to the trenches when they were meant to, and then they come back shell-shocked or didn't even make it home, and then the public see these people who refuse to go. Doesn't give the best impression. And one of the things they would do is if you were a man who looked young enough and you were out in normal society while the war was on and you weren't wearing a military uniform, and there were groups of mainly women who would go around handing out white feathers, and it was a sign that you were a coward if you were given a white feather because you weren't in military uniform when a war was on. But the thing we need to know about conscientious objectors in World War I is they had very harsh treatment. Public treated them harshly, in prison they treated them harshly, they had harsh sentences. Okay, so tomorrow, or whenever your next lesson is, we're going to do conscientious objectors in World War II.